Now, let's take a look at the authoritarian playbook and unmasking Project 2025. This is not random. This is not spontaneous culture war. It's not a flare up of that. It is the execution of a plan called, you guessed it, Project 2025. For those who haven't heard of it, Project 2025 is a 900-page blueprint authored by the Heritage Foundation and over 100 conservative groups for how fundamentally reshaping the American government from day one. And this was day one of a new Trump administration. Its goals are explicit and extreme. It calls for gutting the enforcement of civil rights laws by eliminating concepts. And concepts that we're talking about are like desperate impact, which is used to identify systemic discrimination. It plans to weaponize the Department of Justice to prosecute political opponents, to dismantle diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives across federal government. And it outlines a plan known as Schedule F to strip job protections for tens of thousands of nonpartisan civil servants, allowing them to be replaced with political appointees loyal only to that piece of shit Trump. Now, connect the theory to what we've just seen in practice. Project 2025 outlines how to use the executive branch to enforce ideological conformity. The Kimmel suspension saw the executive branch via the FCC to do exactly that. The campaign to fire teachers and fire critics of Charlie Kirk sees public officials demanding retribution for ideological nonconformity. What has happened this past week is the playbook being run in real time. This is not a political drama. It is a clear and present danger to the American constitutional order. Now, let's look at a world in retreat, the Trump doctrine and its consequences, folks. The decay of democratic norms within the United States is not contained in one crisis. It's radiating outwards. It's creating a power vacuum on the world stage and emboldening authoritarians who see an America that looks more and more like them. We know who we're referring to here, and that is the way it is because we know whether it's Kim Jong-un, Kim Jong-il, whether or not it's Xi or Putin. Yes, all heroes of Trump apparently, because he looks up to them and he respects them and he wants to be just like them. But I'll tell you, he sure as hell is not holding them accountable for the war crimes or illegal actions, humanitarian crisis, the human rights abuses, and, plain and simple, Trump just wants to be like them. But let's move on to the America First foreign policy that has been defined by deep hostility to international cooperation. Now, President Trump has pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Agreement, the World Health Organization, and the Iran nuclear deal, which constantly threatens to abandon core alliances like NATO. This retreat from global leadership has been interpreted by autocrats as a green light. In Hungary, Prime Minister Viktor Orban has escalated his attacks on the LGBTQ plus rights, with his chief of staff crediting the Trump administration for lifting the American boot off his government's chest. In Serbia and Turkey, leaders have cracked down on civil society and political opponents, no longer fearing condemnation from Washington. The guardrails are gone. The moral weight of the U.S. disapproval, which for decades provided at least some check on authoritarian impulses, has vanished. Now we can look at the impunity in the Middle East. Nowhere in this vacuum is it more apparent than in the Middle East. As the U.S. abdicates its role, long simmering conflicts are exploding. A United Nations Commission of Inquiry recently concluded that Israel has committed acts of genocide in Gaza. But don't worry, Trump will go for lunch with Netanyahu and say, hey, maybe you should lighten up. No? All right, I tried. Simultaneously, the International Commission of Jurists has accused Israel of violating the UN Charter and international humanitarian law with its attacks on Lebanon. Their report details indiscriminate and disproportionate attacks, the targeting of UN peacekeepers, and the issuance ineffective evacuation orders that have created over 1 million internally displaced people. All while the UN Security Council remains, in their words, blocked by divisions and incapable of action. Thanks, Trump.